What's up, doggy?
Can you hear me?
What's up, doggy?
What's up?
Yeah, I hear. I need earbuds right quick. We are live.
Oh yeah, the earbuds. Yeah. Oh, good.
Well, I be goddamn.
You still hear that
Hello?
feedback?
Hello?
Yeah, I get.
There you go.
Yeah, I get it.
Got you. We good to go.
We tracking, Bubba. We tracking.
Tracking, bro.
Yeah, man.
Tracking.
Let me cut this thing going off. So, a whole bunch of things going down
A
tonight.
whole bunch of
dog.
things going down tonight, dog.
Of course. Of course, man. Make sure I share. Hello.
And this is our first time.
This is our first time.
I'm live on.
Facebook,
and we're doing YouTube channels.
and we're doing YouTube channels.
Oh wow. Okay. That's the play. I'm gonna share it as soon as I see it. You in? Team, you there? Well, if we're live, ladies and gentlemen, I think we are live on there you go. Yeah, we are definitely live, team. But we don't see you actually there. So Jones, if you there, it looks like we're waiting on you.
I'm add myself to the screen.
Add myself to the screen.
There you go. Okay.
And let me do this.
I gotta reset my router or something.
Okay. Folk out there in the atmosphere.
Folk out there
This is the
in the atmosphere. This is
first
the
time we're doing it via YouTube.
first
So
time we're
bear
doing
with
it
us. All
via
we're doing is
YouTube.
we're trying to
So
figure
bear
out
with us. All we're doing is we're trying to figure out
what's going on.
what's going on.
All right. Well, I'm
Well,
gonna go ahead and start talking
I'm going
while
ahead
the
and
audience
start
is building.
while the audience is building.
Got you.
You found your headphones?
You found your headphones?
Yeah, I'm on. They're in there.
Okay. I got
Okay.
feedback
Yeah, we
coming.
got
from
to go.
I got feedback coming from someone.
Really?
Yeah. I can play through it though.
I can play through it though. I play through it.
Okay. It's good on my end.
So basically, the one thing that I'm gonna talk about,
we talk about issues
nationwide when it comes to
nationwide when it
African
comes to African Americans, what things affect African Americans.
It is a landmark case
It is a landmark case
signed in Georgia, the state
signed
of
in Georgia, the state of Georgia.
The governor of Georgia signed
The governor of Georgia
Senate
signed
Bill
what we call Senate Bill 202,
which takes us back to the Jim
back
Crow
to
era,
Jim Crow era,
for sure.
for sure.
And what's
And
also sparked is states like Texas, Louisiana, states Midwest, some as far as California, are creating legislature to slow down the narrative of African Americans voting in the United States of America.
Right.
And this is a direct backlash
And this is a direct backlash to what just
in
happened
the election of the last
in
president
the
of
election
these
of the
United
last
States of
president
America.
of these United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Trump is so gangster
Now, Trump is so gangster
that he didn't hijack the
that he
Republican
didn't
Party
hijack the Republican.
in every state. That's whatever you just did, dog. Fix the problem. Well, in every state
Got you.
that didn't vote for Trump, he done created his own version of the Republican Party, and he gonna run his own candidates to change the government structures in those states. For instance, in the state of Georgia, he is running a set of Republicans against the Republicans that are already in office. So in essence, Trump done went gangster and took over the Republican Party, and now he's making it a nationwide agenda to bring the Republican Party back into the hands of I guess the narrative of controlling, I guess, across the United States of America, and preparing for an all-out assault and war come 2024 presidential election. And so what I bring that up because I'm not here to talk about party, whether it be Republican or Democrat, but I am going to talk about strategy. Me and you talk about this all the time. A lot of times African Americans lose when it comes to things in our community because we don't have a strategic plan in order. Now, we good about complaining,
Right.
oh, the white man keeping me down, and we good about saying that, oh, we don't have a leg up and everything like that. And guess what, brother, Dr. Pugh? I agree in some of those instances. We don't have those things to get us to that narrative. But at the same time, I see we struggle as far as strategy is concerned, as far as the national game plan is concerned. Someone came to me today and said, what is the black agenda? What is the black agenda? What is it? What is it? What is the county black agenda? What is the state of Georgia black agenda? What's the United States of America black agenda? And we and you grew up in the age of the NAACP. That's who pretty much gave us the black agenda as far as anything dealing with African Americans or black people, whichever one you want to call it. We all know that those are just subtitles just to keep us described, but just so we can keep the narrative flow and conversation going. You understand that there is no national agenda as far as what we want to do in these United States of America. There's no national game plan. I want to talk about the Asians, and I feel sorry for what happened in Atlanta when it came to the Asians, but that mass shooting that happened with the Asians, did you see how fast the Asians mounted up, collected the efforts, and made sure policy was put in play to fix the narrative of what happened there? Now, mind you, we've been dealing with 400 years of slavery, and we can barely get certain things like like appropriations, or even equal rights, being able to do construction sites, or I can't think of the thing right now, but being able to build wealth within the black community. We are still struggling almost 400 or 500 years after this society in America was established. And here come the Asians. The Asians were able, and I applaud them getting their appropriations and everything like that. I'm applauding them. So don't go out there and saying, well, James, you talking bad about it. I ain't saying nothing bad about the Asians. I applaud them. They got together and got what they need narratively strict, got what they needed to fix whatever issues they got going on with them. Where we've been dealing with for 400 years, and we can't get together to get a pack of toothpicks. We can't even get together to understand that power in America is all tied to home ownership or what land you own. And I've seen sporadically where throughout America in the last 2 or 3 years, we've done what we could to get more land ownership as far as a group of people is concerned. But in today's society, what are we doing to make it kosher, or what are we doing to make it better for the next generation of African Americans who come after us? What are we doing to make it where politics, which is something simple, what are we doing where we're making it politics is easy for that next generation to get involved in, to take over, to bring a narrative of change? Because my thing is, Dr. Pugh, and I ain't trying to talk bad about you, brother, but me and you are getting to that point where we becoming too old to be effective as far as being the narrator creators. And we should be getting into the mentorship phase of letting this younger generation come in here and build among those things that we need to be doing in our community. And so with that narrative, I done talked for 10 minutes. It is what it is. Don't get caught by the ITiS. I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Pugh, because you heard me. I rambled a little bit. And like I said, we're going through the rambling phases now, people. We're gonna be culture and everything like that eventually, when we get to that point of being above water. But right now, we just want to establish some credence, some guidance, some stands of where we want to stand at. So when we have these week to week conversations, you can be engaged and you can be learning something thought provoking from us. So I'm gonna turn it back over to you, brother.
I'll just first off start off with a quote. If you really want to get the package, you need to find out the name and address, right? So the biggest thing that I would say is the bill or the law that was just passed, that's described to be for the Asian American community. This what my question would be: who authored the bill or the law? Who was present to get it passed? That's my two questions. Who authored the bill or the law or the act, and who was present to get it passed? Because right now, the biggest thing that I'm trying to concentrate on is, in order for to get things passed, I was under the impression that you need everybody, right? Look at the narrative that's always given to our community. Well, y'all need a agenda. Well, the thing is, we need to be very specific on who y'all is. Is everybody invited into these rooms where all of these laws are written? Who has the access to get back there? So it's easy to tell me I need to, we need to unify. Yeah, we unified all the time, but do we have access to the power? That's what a lot of people may not understand. So it's not necessarily hating. I'm glad that you bring that up. It was just like, you're not against any community, but we have to ask, how can some communities get specific legislation in their favor to their benefit, and we're still, running in circles trying to figure out what kind of legislation we can get for our benefit? One of the main reasons is because of our description. I will tell you why. The description literally makes us outside of the protection of law. That's one of the things, right? So we are going to have to figure out what some type of nationality is going to help us get into the, to the fold of government that would allow us to be seen and heard or whatnot. Because right now, only thing we're getting are acts. We're not getting real legislation, not really laws that specifically go to us. Now, remember, when you start talking about specific communities, every time that the people who are described as African American and Black, when you get a specific amount of momentum, then minorities benefit. We've never benefited directly for African American. Now, I'm gonna put it like this: a lot of people may say, "Well, you got scholarships." Scholarships are not legislation. That's what a lot of people may need to understand. We have benefits. You may get little privileges over there. You may get some awards. However, a lot of people don't understand that awards are not laws. Just because a couple of you get access doesn't mean your entire group, that you have been grouped outside of your permission. Your group does not benefit just because one or two or three people get a scholarship to Howard or Yale or Morehouse or Spelman. That's not reparations. And this is one of the main things that I pay attention to, is every time that when it comes down to benefiting the group that we've been placed in, I've always seen scholarships mentioned. And I'm like, man, that sounds great. That sounds really, really good. However, that's not a law. You know what I mean? That's something put in place for some people to benefit. And that's only for the people who decided to go to college. And the main thing that I started asking for, I said, those scholarships only benefit the people who've been accepted. So you still need access to even benefit from the things that were pushed through. So when we start talking about legislation, Brother Jones, one thing we're going to have to admit, and when I say we, I'm talking about me, I'm going to have to admit that I don't know every law that's put out there. I don't know how everyone is classified and how certain groups are allowed to get things pushed through at a timely manner and other groups are not. But I will tell you this: if there has never been any legislation that was put under the guise or the name or the description of Black or African American people only, not scholarships, not more hiring practices, no, all of that stuff where someone has to interview one person before they turn you away for the job anyway. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about a specific law. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think there was a law that President Biden just pushed through. I'm not sure exactly the name of that law, and I think it was a anti-hate bill or something like that. I have to look for it and double check. But that's legislation. That means it's like a punishment or a crime for doing certain things, right? To a specific community. You have to ask yourself, how did that come about so quickly, right? Now, a lot of people have been assaulted, but now the narrative is that a certain group is being assaulted. My question is, what group has had the narrative of being assaulted in history the most in the history of the United States? And so now, and I'm gonna be honest with you, like I've always done, I gotta stop that habit. But when you start looking at the anti-lynching bill that was recently passed, I don't even know if it passed all the way, but it was in the last year or so, last couple of years, the anti-lynching law. The anti-lynching law still does not address one group of people. You know what I'm saying? So some of the things that we are asking for, when people start asking for an agenda, who's in charge of these legislative meetings? Who is the head of these specific groups that are getting things passed? See, remember, I haven't met any leader of any other group. I only see certain leaders that come up for our group, and those same leaders, and that's no disrespect to them, but it looks like the group that's described as African American or Black are always told to go get your leader. But my question is, who is the leader of all the rest of the groups who are considered minority? So guess what happens? If we've been told that we need a leader and everybody else, we don't even know who their leader is, the leader may not be the issue. It's the access to the resources at the end of the day. So, and that's literally just my question. I didn't have too much to say about it because as soon as you said it, I was already thinking it before you brought this topic up. And a lot of people are still confused. How can all of this stuff still be happening in 2021? Well, that is the biggest question right now because our unity, it may not be enough. You still need to unify, but you still need people in the room who got access to those resources and have the power to make that move. I get a full black to you.
And I'm reading. You asked for it. I'm reading it, and this is coming from the New York Times. President Biden on Tuesday laid out plans to address rising racism against Asian Americans, increasing accessibility to hate crime data, requiring new training for local police, and establishing nearly $50 million in grants to support survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault who face language barriers. So $50 million was just laid out, and like once again, I'm not against anybody getting this kind of conversation going, but here we are, African Americans. I want to say when Abraham Lincoln, when America was formed and everything like that, and I mean not Abraham Lincoln, but George Washington when we formed America, and then a few years later, then you had Abraham Lincoln. About 100 years later, you had the Abraham Lincoln situation where Emancipation Proclamation, slavery is free and everything like that, and then we were supposed to get appropriations, and then afterward, guess what happened? Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, and then here comes the next president, and then the 40 acres and the mule disappeared, dissipated away, and so now you fast forward to 2021, and guess what? We still have not received any kind of appropriations. We still have not received anything to give us a leg up. We all understand in America that African Americans don't own the amount of wealth they should be owning in comparison to other races out there. We all know in America that a lot of that reason why is tied to the fact that when we try to get a leg up, our leg is pulled back. We all know these things in America. And my thing is, if we really want to fix the problems that go on in American society, what we want to do is we need to look at the number 3 now biggest population, because we were the number 2. Now we're the number 3. The number 3 population who has the same native traits, because we didn't want to be here. They were brought here as slaves. We were released from slavery, and we were asked, every time it say, now you released from slavery, but you ain't got no land to go to. And it's sad that almost 300 years later, we still dealing with the situation of, hey, you're free, you're no longer a slave. But guess what? You can work on my plantation. I can't give you much money, but you can work on my plantation. If I'm a free slave and I've all my life not understood what how to actually do interact and socially be out there among yourself, because you told me I couldn't read, you told me I couldn't write, you told me I couldn't communicate, you told me at any time you'll take my family away from me. You did all these things right here, and then all of a sudden you say you're free, and then you do nothing to make it where it's actually easy for us to be able to assimilate and associate within the society. And now you look at the map, and the same map that you had the problems of slavery is the same map almost 150 years later that still has those same issues, same problems. 170 years later, they have those same issues, same problems. Bishop Greg Adams, a good friend of mine, I would say that Native Americans they have experienced just as much of not more injustice than blacks. Indians are confined to reservations. And I agree with you on that. I ain't gonna argue on that. 40 acres and mules is not fair compensation for what we've experienced. And I agree with you, but at the time, 40 acres and a mule would have been better than getting absolutely positively nothing. Because what we were done is we were given our freedom and we were told to take the belongings, which we didn't have nothing at that time. Even the guys who were free only had a piece of paper. It didn't have an identification. And guess what? At any time, and states like Maryland, states like South Carolina had it where if you were a free man and you traveled into these states, you could be turned back into a slave at any time. So was it really anything in reference to us being truly free as free people is concerned? And a lot of people think that, and be honest with you, Dr. Pugh, a lot of people think that Jay Jones is afraid of having these conversations. But I ain't afraid of talking about the truth, because the truth will set you free. And my thing is we ought to understand that where we come from can hold us back from where we need to go. And a lot of us still have a slave mentality, have that same mentality that we have not wakened to come off that plantation. I turn it over to you.
Well, I put like this too. One thing that I was on a podcast last night, and they were just talking about how can minority groups get along. And one of the main things that I teach in my class is that race is a team sport, right? And anytime when you've been placed on a team, anybody on the other team who, regardless if they're your family member or not, they're still on the next team, and that forces everyone to compete. And one thing I do want to say is no matter what group you're a part of, go get what's yours. You know what I'm saying? Go get what you're supposed to have. Go get exactly what you've earned and get what you've been promised. It doesn't matter who you are. I think every person of every group, if you identify with a group or not, I think historically you have to look at exactly what happened. And frankly, the reason why we are so confused about what actually happened across the board is that all of us have gotten different narratives, but we've never gotten the overall truth. We're subjected to what everybody is telling us, right? We weren't there, right? And there's a lot of things that have happened in the United States government that a lot of us are just not aware of, and we don't even know where to look to find exactly what happened. Right now, we're just trying to make the best of it that we can in our current situation, right? So, what do I mean? Why am I saying this? If we get to a point where we start comparing hardships, comparing historical oppression, we will actually waste even more time trying to compare with each other who's hurting the most, instead of actually everybody be responsible for what's theirs. You understand what I'm saying? Like when you mentioned the Asian community, if they got some legislation pulled, kudos to you. That's almost like a school in another state winning their state championship. We're trying to win ours. You know what I mean?
Agree.
And it's not necessarily something like, oh, they had it bad or they had it good. Everybody got challenges. It's not who got challenges or who got it worse. It's whose barrier is still in place, right? And what are you doing about it? Because me just comparing it really doesn't do anything. I can acknowledge it, but when we start comparing it, that's when we start spinning wheels a little bit. So this is the thing that I try to do when I'm talking about different people's plight, I highly suggest that I always sit back and let people who identify with that specific group speak on behalf of that group. I have no idea what other people are doing other than what I've read and what I see on TV. But at the end of the day, anything with an editor should be questioned, right? I've never been to a reservation. I have never been to an Asian American community where I sat down and talked to everybody and see exactly what's going on with them. I have never been to the Jewish community and sat down with them and said, "Hey, y'all, educate me on what actually happened." Most of us, we don't have not necessarily the resources, but even the access to go to those communities and have them sit down and teach us exactly what happened, because we're still getting, I would say, we're getting a specific treatment in our own community. Everybody's fighting to stay alive themselves. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, and and I think it's very, very peculiar, and we do have to have an honest conversation about this. People who are described as black in this country, man, we have a narrative that we're always fighting. We always have a stereotype that we're always fighting. And sometimes when you're fighting your stereotype or fighting your narrative and trying to make sure you don't look a certain way in your community or in the society that you're in, you can lose focus on the main issue. We're so worried about what we look like to other people that we end up fighting other people's fight all the time. And there's no shade to anybody else's, man, but that is the main course of distraction to get you off the goal instead of you trying to get your quote unquote either reparations, voting rights, hiring rights, whatever. The narrative begins to say, well, you don't support other people. You'd be like, no, no, no. It's not that I don't support other people. It's just you love you. It's
So
almost
so
like
so
this.
so so so
Uh,
let me before you go too deep, dog. I gotta ask you a question on that point right there. Oh, you want
Go
me?
ahead.
You want? I can hold it. It's up to you.
No,
Uh,
go
uh,
ahead.
my point is this, dog. Within that case, in America, when Americans step up and fight on their own for their own push with another people, another group of people. Like for instance, it came down to the Civil Rights Act. When we were talking about the Civil Rights Act, originally it was supposed to be about African American Civil Rights Act, and then guess what? But we added
Hmm.
the disability, and we added other groups that needed to add. But the argument should have been about us fighting to say keep it on the table. We want to talk about civil rights for African American
Hmm.
right now, or blacks right
Right.
now. But they added
Right. Right. Right.
disability, they added race, religion, creed, women, all those other different factors that are all discriminatory acts out there. But we never concentrated strictly on what is tearing apart the African American community. I'm not gonna go on a tangent
Hmm.
because I heard you, I agree with you. But every time I try to focus on that, we got
You're breaking up pretty bad. I can't hear your sentence.
hello, you backed up.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm back. Okay. Your
You got
last,
away from
I
me.
would say last 20 seconds. Yeah, your last 20 seconds I couldn't hear.
So basically, in a nutshell, Doc, what can we do to get African Americans to understand nobody else is going to fight for us harder than what we're going to fight for?
Mm,
What do we got to do to
correct.
get us to understand that land ownership, building ownership, business ownership, all those
Mm,
different ownerships are the key to our success? And I got Bishop, I got
hmm.
my friend Bishop, who is Adams. I'm gonna bring him in on this conversation as well. But what can we do to
Hmm.
keep the progression flowing?
Well, I would say any type of progression, we at least have to have an honest conversation of what progression looks like and what people are willing to do to get it, right? The issue is what is the top priority for everyone? I don't think everybody has the exact same priority because when you're so busy trying to survive and make it to the next day, you may not understand what the next 5 to 10 years looks like because so many people are still trying to make it to the next day. So it's a lot of different things that we have to get under control, man. Like, and when I say under control, I'm talking about the things that are actually in our grasp, right? Can we teach our own children, proper history and educate them when they come home? Are we still going to I would say, depend on the education system to give our children everything that they need. If we know for a fact that the proper curriculum and the accurate curriculum is not allowed in the school system, are we actually going to start having evening programs to teach our children accurate history? That's something we can do, right? Also, too, man, policing our own communities. That's going to be one of the most, I would say, interesting conversations that we can have, because a lot of us really don't know what we can and cannot do when it comes down to policing our own, because we're being policed. So how can you be under someone else's jurisdiction and have your own? You're not even careful. You're not even really sure what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do, because, just being frank, we're not protected. So, a lot of people say protect your own, protect your own, protect your own. But if you go outside and try to protect your own, you may get arrested or worse. So we're
Mm-hmm.
going to have to really find out exactly what that looks like and what we can and cannot do, not necessarily when it comes down to fear, but we talking about things that are actually practical. When I go outside and try to police my own community, who needs to be involved? Who needs to understand this is what we're doing? Who's going to give us leeway to police our own communities? Because, being honest with you, man, look, we have a national trial that's going on right now about one of the biggest things that we need to really talk about, and it's just abuse from